You're watching Building the Franchise with the Jacksonville Jaguars, only on MBL Network.
Welcome back to the Building the Franchise series, everyone, hosted by yours truly, Unisolated. And as you know from the last episode, we have a new team now, the Jacksonville Jaguars. We're no longer the New England Patriots. So we're going to go through the preseason in this episode. We're going to go through all 4 weeks of the preseason, some of our preseason cuts, and then get into a little bit of catch-up game here for season number 26, where we break down weeks 1 through 6. Before we do that, though, one thing that I want to be a little different from the Patriots series is I want the audience to be a little more involved. Make sure you guys are leaving comments on things that you see, position battles, things like that, different players that you think we should try to pick up, and, just anything that you see that kind of would make this a little bit more your own, as well as it's my team, it's your team as well as the audience. So make sure that you guys are being interactive in the comment section down there. And without further ado, we're going to go ahead and jump into this. And one of the biggest stories for this Jacksonville Jaguars team coming into this first season here of Madden 18 is going to be who's going to be the starting quarterback. As you know, the game changed a little bit as far as non-elite quarterbacks, so we want to make sure that we're using the best option that we have available. And a big thing in the media right now is Colin Kaepernick. Is Colin Kaepernick a good fit for the Jacksonville Jaguars with our current situation? Right now we have Chad Henne, Blake Bortles, and Brandon Allen. So Colin Kaepernick may be somebody that's on our radar. And as everyone knows, he does have some off-the-field issues to deal with, but it's something that the Jacksonville organization and myself may be able to handle. Let's just go ahead and look at what the media is saying about Colin Kaepernick with the Jacksonville Jaguars.
Is Colin Kaepernick a better option than what they currently have on the roster right now, DC?
Let's just be rational about it. Let's think about it, okay? You're sitting there with Tom Coughlin and Doug Marrone.
Yeah.
Brandon Allen's a pretty good option. Give Brandon Allen a shot at this thing. But I totally understand do you want to put Chad Henne in there? Well, you got 3 games out of him when you were supposed to be waiting for Blake Bortles to get ready, and then that was it. So then you put Blake Bortles in, and you had the Blake Bortles experiment, and that has looked as if it's over now. Right. I really think that Blake Bortles is going to find that, that lack of confidence, it's going to be impossible, really literally impossible for him to come back and get out of this little funk that he's in. So is Colin Kaepernick the next available option? You just heard Doug Marrone say we don't have a really good option right now. The first 2 guys he's not too happy about. You're going to need to bring in another quarterback in, is my point, because you're not going to want to put any one of those guys out there right now. They're not feeling great about it. So Blake, you don't want to even play him, because if he gets hurt, you're kind of stuck with the guaranteed money and everything. So at the end of this year, exactly, with the 5th-year option. So, yeah, maybe Colin is a fit there.
So we went ahead and done it. We went ahead and pulled the trigger on Colin Kaepernick, brought him in at least for the preseason, let him try out, see if he's any better than Chad Henne and Blake Bortles. Brandon Allen really won't get any time during preseason here. The QB battle is going to be between Kaepernick, Bortles, and Henne. So let's go ahead and jump to week number 2 of the preseason, where we're going to look to continue the success from our 28-21 victory against the New England Patriots in week number 1 of the preseason, where we're going to be taking on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers at home in Jacksonville. And again, this is going to be a game that we're really looking at the quarterback situation to figure out what we want to do moving forward into the regular season, kind of get an idea throughout this entire preseason on what we're going to do at the quarterback position. And in this week 2 matchup against the Buccaneers, we had 2 quarterbacks playing. Same thing as last week. We had Bortles and Kaepernick. Last week in week 1 against the Patriots, Bortles completed 80% of his passes, whereas Kaepernick only completed 58%, and the yards were pretty close to the same. Kaepernick did throw 1 interception, but both of them threw a touchdown. So the battle was close coming into this week 2 matchup. And in week number 2, neither one of them proved that the team is theirs. Blake Bortles completed only 33% of his passes, only 31 yards, and threw an interception. And Kaepernick completed 25% of his for 24 yards and 2 interceptions. We did bring in Chad Henne at the end of the game, and he ended up throwing an interception, got no completions. So again, the quarterback battle is still up for grabs here. We did lose to the Bucs 17-3, and we went into week number 3 against the Panthers and got completely destroyed by Carolina. Their offense is pretty explosive so far in this cycle, and they ended up winning 41-14. So we're not even going to look at any highlights on that. We're going to move on to week number 4 of the preseason against the Atlanta Falcons. And this was a game that the quarterback play was a little better from Blake Bortles. He kind of came in and showed that the team was his and showed that he wanted to lead this team into the regular season. Bortles was making smart decisions throughout the entire beginning of this game when he was in control of the team. He had 145 yards and 2 touchdowns before he went down with an injury. So with the injury to Blake Bortles, that's kind of going to tie our hands as far as the decision that we're able to make here in the last week of the preseason. So who's going to get the start at the beginning of the regular season is still up for grabs between Chad Henne and Colin Kaepernick. And with Kaepernick getting reps in the first 3 games of the preseason, with Henne having very little only in week 2, Henne was allowed to finish out the game behind Blake Bortles' injury, and he came in and threw 100% completions. Not a ton of yards, no touchdowns or interceptions or anything. He was just making smart decisions, and that was what the coaching staff was looking for their quarterback for the season. So Chad Henne is going to be the starter with Blake Bortles' injury, and the question now becomes what will happen when Bortles returns. We end up losing to the Falcons 16-17 on a failed 2-point conversion for the win there at the end of the game after driving down to score to tie it up. The coaching staff went for 2, and it's preseason, why not? So we went for 2, and we were unable to convert it. So we ended up losing to the Falcons. Now we're going to look at some of our end of the preseason cuts, getting ready for the regular season, getting the roster down to 53 men. And as you see here, we have 6 running backs on the roster, way too many to go into the regular season. So we're going to go ahead and cut Harris and Grimes. They're not as experienced as the rest of the running back group, but we are going to keep the other 4 throughout the preseason, with Grant playing more of a kick returner and punt returner type role. For the fullback position, we're going to go ahead and release the 3rd-year veteran Tommy Bohannon. He is not winning that battle against Marquez Williams. When Williams was on the field blocking for the running backs, it was a much better run game. So we're going to go ahead and let Tommy Bohannon go, despite them being so close in talent level, and you would think Tommy Bohannon would be able to edge him out with his experience in the league, but he wasn't able to. The rookie out of Miami takes the starting fullback position. And at the wide receiver position, we're going to have 6 wide receivers make the roster. There were some other people that were brought on kind of to try to win some special teams roles, but they weren't able to win those positions above some of the guys we already had on our roster. So the wide receivers going into the regular season are going to be Allen Robinson, Allen Hurns, Marquise Lee, Dede Westbrook. And this guy, he's a 4th string guy right now, but he is a rookie with a lot of upside that we're excited to get him developed and get him more into that slot receiver type role. We're also going to have Rashad Green Sr. and Colby Listenby heading into the regular season. At tight end, we went ahead and released tight end Ben Koyak, as well as put Alex Ellis on the practice squad. And at right guard, 25-year-old Chris Reed has been released from the Jaguars. On the defensive side of the ball, right end Malachi Goodman has been released, middle linebacker Audie Cole, and cornerback Charles James II, as well as Tyler Patman have been released. And we went ahead and placed cornerback Tracy Howard and strong safety Gerard Wilson on the practice squad. And the last player to note before we head into this Week 1 matchup against the Texans was Brandon Allen, the 4th string quarterback. He was sent down to the practice squad for future use and to develop a little bit before next season. And it is finally time for the regular season. MBL season number 26, week number 1, we face off against the Houston Texans. Of course, the Texans are a division rival, but not only that, but their owner, Baston, he is a rival in and of itself. He was the Bills last cycle, I was the Patriots. So he is a very, very, very familiar foe that we'll be facing off against here in week number 1. So coming into this game, we did find out that Deshaun Watson is going to be the starting quarterback for the Houston Texans, and we're definitely going to have to watch out for him. He was a very explosive player in college, so it's somebody that we're going to have to keep a close eye on and make sure he doesn't really get out of the pocket and try to scramble or anything. And of course, as always, we have to watch out for Lamar Miller and DeAndre Hopkins. These are 2 guys that are explosive without Deshaun Watson, so you add somebody who can get out of the pocket and deliver some of those harder passes than a Texans quarterback has been able to complete lately, and it's going to be a tough matchup against this division rival here. And then on their defensive side, of course, you have to watch out for J.J. Watt. He's a guy who is just absolutely phenomenal. No matter who he goes against on the offensive line, he is one of the best defenders in the NBL and somebody that every team that plays against the Texans has to watch out for. So after both offenses go down and score and make the game 7-7 in the first quarter, the special teams comes up with a huge hit. Brandon Flowers picks it up and runs it back for a touchdown, giving us a 14-7 lead still in the first quarter. And on the ensuing kickoff, the catch is kind of bobbled. I don't know what he was doing, but he does get hit really hard about the 20-yard line, and we do recover that as well, giving us really short field position. And Allen Robinson takes advantage of it on the very next play with a little slant pass and scores a touchdown of his own. But after that play, the offense stalls out, allowing the Texans to come back and get a 38-21 lead. But Leonard Fournette brings it a little closer. He scores his first touchdown of his career, and he is the offensive player of the game for this game. 11 attempts for 82 yards and a touchdown, and Jalen Ramsey takes the defensive player of the game with 5 tackles and 1 interception. We did end up losing this game, however, after the comeback by the Texans with a final score of 38-28 Houston. For our Week 2 matchup, we take on the Tennessee Titans. And of course, for the second week in a row, we take on a division rival. This time we are in Jacksonville for our home opener. And of course, some of the players on the Titans that we have to watch out for in this game is going to be Marcus Mariota, DeMarco Murray, and Derrick Henry. Murray and Henry, kind of that 1-2 punch in the backfield there in Tennessee. And of course, one of the big things that we're going to be looking to avoid this week is the offensive collapse in the second half like we had last week against the Texans. And unfortunately, that's pretty much what happened against the Titans here. They scored their first drive, we came back and answered, and then we scored a total of 21 unanswered. So we had a 21-7 lead here in the game, and their defense pretty much shut us down after that. The Titans ended up coming back and scoring a total of 24 points to take the 3-point victory against us in week number 2. The biggest news from that game, however, is Leonard Fournette tore his hamstring and will be out for the next 8 weeks. He, of course, is a rookie player who we were extremely excited to have on our team and somebody that we were looking to develop throughout this entire season. And now he's going to miss an equivalent of a half a season. We do have our bye week in there, so that helps a little bit, but he is going to miss some significant time this season. And for our offensive player of the game, we had tight end Mercedes Lewis, which you've just seen score the big long touchdown. Kind of the big man rumbling down the field there. Not even necessarily graceful by any means, but he was able to avoid some Titans defenders and score a touchdown. So he did have 3 receptions for 82 yards and a touchdown. And Jalen Ramsey, once again, 8 tackles, 1 interception, and 1 forced fumble, really solidifying himself as a leader on the defensive side. And for our Week 3 matchup, we take on the Baltimore Ravens. Of course, we're coming into this game 0-2 after our disappointing losses in the first two weeks. But I'm not actually going to show you any footage from this game. Down in the description, this game was an MBL live broadcasted game, so make sure you go check that game out down there. The offensive and defensive players for that game, however, halfback Corey Grant had 7 attempts for 113 yards and a touchdown. And middle linebacker Paul Posluszny, 3 tackles and 1 interception. For our Week 4 game, we took on the New York Jets, and Blake Bortles actually returned in the Week 3 game that is on the MBL Live broadcast, so make sure you check out that to kind of get the news for that. But Bortles was benched during the game against the New York Jets, and Chad Henne was brought back in once again, and we ended up losing that game to the Jets 17-3. Looking ahead to our Week 5 matchup, we take on the Pittsburgh Steelers. This is a team that, as you know, is extremely tough to beat in the NBL, especially when they're at home. And of course, with Ben Roethlisberger leading the helm there in Pittsburgh, it's a team that can make plays even when you think that they're down and out in the game. And of course, they also have Le'Veon Bell, one of the best running backs in the NBL, and somebody that is just so ridiculously difficult to tackle that it's not even funny. He's a guy who can pretty much get out of any kind of arm tackle. You have to make sure that you fully wrap up and pray that there's defenders coming behind you to help, because he can break pretty much anything, as you see right here as he spins off my defensive line. On their offensive side, of course, they have Antonio Brown, a player who is just as explosive as Le'Veon Bell and can pretty much score from anywhere on the field as long as Roethlisberger has the time to get him the ball. And on our side of the ball, Corey Grant, who was the player of the game there against the Ravens in Week 3, he went down in Week 4 against the Jets, so he's going to miss a couple weeks as well. So Chris Ivory, the ex-Jet, comes in as the starting running back with Leonard Fournette still out until Week 10. And he comes in and he doesn't really do too terrible, but he doesn't do great as well. He gets 13 attempts for 42 yards and a touchdown. And the big news for this game, though, is not necessarily what our running backs could do, but it was the quarterback play was not good. Colin Kaepernick got the start above Blake Bortles in this game as the quarterback carousel continued here in Jacksonville. And Colin Kaepernick came in through 16 of 27 for 228 yards and 1 touchdown. The killer, though, is he threw 4 interceptions. He threw 4 interceptions in this game, one of which was while we were trying to go for 2 to make it a 3-point game, if I'm not mistaken. And Pittsburgh picked it off and took it back to the house. So they got points, whereas we should have just kicked a field goal. But the coaching staff took full accountability for that call, and they said after the game that we should have kicked a field goal. It should have been a 1-point attempt there, not putting the ball in the hands of Colin Kaepernick, who had been struggling most of the game. And the Steelers do hold on to win this game 30-16 against us here in week number 5. And for our players of the game this week, we had Allen Robinson on the offensive side with 5 receptions, 73 yards, and a touchdown. And Jalen Ramsey once again making the defensive player of the game with his 2 tackles, 2 interceptions, and a forced fumble against the Pittsburgh Steelers. For week 6, we moved on to the Los Angeles Rams, not the St. Louis Rams, as I continue to try to call them. We played against the Rams here in week 6 and came into this game really with nothing to lose. The coaching staff has decided that Chad Henne will no longer be a Jacksonville Jaguar. Chad Henne was released prior to this week 6 matchup, as well as Brandon Allen, who was placed on the practice squad at the beginning of the season, was brought up from the practice squad and was told that he is the quarterback of the Jacksonville Jaguars for the remainder of season number 26. He doesn't really have any reps with the first team, as he didn't really play any during the preseason, and of course being on the practice squad has not had any time with the offense here in the regular season. But he was told that the team is his, do with it what he can, and basically use this season as a learning tool moving into season number 27. He is projected to be the starting quarterback for season number 27, with this season 26 experience kind of helping him out in that transition. And also we brought in a player off of the Chargers practice squad, running back Mizell. He is a little more explosive than Chris Ivory and some of the other backs we have on our team that aren't currently benched with injuries. So he was brought in to be the starting role for the time that Leonard Fournette is still to miss. And he didn't really do terrible. He didn't really have a lot of opportunities to get the ball because we went down early against them, as Brandon Allen was strip sacked for a touchdown at the beginning of the game, kind of setting the tone. And Brandon Allen, pretty much the team went pass heavy. He ended up throwing 4 interceptions and no touchdowns. So it was definitely not the debut that he was looking for with the Jacksonville Jaguars. But again, he hasn't had any time with the offense, so it's to be expected that he's going to struggle the first couple games that he's at the starting quarterback position. And with his 4 interceptions in the game, we lost to the Rams 34-0, getting shut out. And the offensive players of the game were wide receiver Allen Robinson with 4 receptions, 43 yards, and of course no touchdowns. And once again, Jalen Ramsey. Jalen Ramsey, 2 tackles, 1 interception, who he is on pace to break the MBL interception record. So we're just hoping that he stays healthy and is able to continue to shut down opposing wide receivers. And that's going to wrap up this first episode of season number 26 here with the Jacksonville Jaguars. Make sure you're leaving some comments and feedback down below in the comments section like I mentioned before. And also be sure to check out the Building the Franchise series with the Detroit Lions, hosted by the commissioner himself, Bomber. Also, again, down in the description is going to be the MBL live broadcast link for our Week 3 matchup against the Ravens. Also, moving forward, we are going to have these episodes posted every Tuesday, kind of like the Lions are posting theirs every Saturday. We're going to put ours out every Tuesday, so we're trying to keep you, as a Building the Franchise team, we're trying to keep you as up-to-date as possible without so much content in one episode so that it's not too overwhelming. And make sure you tune in to the MBL Network tomorrow night at 7 p.m. Eastern as we take on the Indianapolis Colts on the MBL Live broadcast.